We have a full show tonight.
We do. And we are going to reconnect with a longtime friend that many of you know from this radio station and other radio stations around the Chicago area. Charlie Meyerson is going to be joining us. Charlie is now the publisher of a wonderful news site, Chicago Public Square.
Isn't that great?
It is.
It is one of the go-to news sites that we have every day.
Wasn't it just recognized as being the best blog?
Didn't they get the Readers Award for the best blog?
If not once, several times, but at least once, and deservedly so. There's nothing that really compares. There's nothing as good. I've seen others, and they really pale in comparison.
Yep. He puts a lot of effort into making that a first-class site where you can go and just kind of get all the news you need to start your day.
Maybe you can get him to talk a little bit about that.
You think?
Maybe. It'd be a good idea.
We'll see if we can
So we
twist
started
his arm.
in radio in 1977 is when we started together. Dean Richards, Charlie Meyerson, and yours truly at WMRO and WAUR in Aurora.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
It was a wonderful radio station, too, because it was like the WGN of the Fox Valley.
It really was.
Don't laugh at that, because Aurora was a big town.
That was back in the day when the suburban radio stations, they played for their own audience.
Right.
And there was like a WJOB in Hammond, same thing. Yeah, on the outskirts of Chicago, but still full-service radio station for their own audience, which is what WAUR was doing.
WMRO in particular, we had a great, because we were talk and sports, and we had a great sports department and carried all the NIU Husky sports because we were, a stone's throw from DeKalb. It was a perfect fit. One of the funnest things that I ever did when I worked out there was North Aurora and North Aurora. Well, there were competing Aurora teams, and it was such a big competition. They had me out there with the wives of the coaches from the Aurora teams. I was like, okay, is this going to be like a wrestling match? What's going to happen? I did not realize just how intense the rivalry was. And I think it's probably still that way. But it was great because they had a radio station where you could listen to those games. And it was really, it was a great service. And it was also pretty fun to be a big fish in a small pond.
Sure. Well, we got to take a quick break, and then we've got a whole lot coming up, so stay with us at WGN.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Tell me just what do you read?
Steve King and Johnnie Putman at WGN Radio. Well, tell me just what do you read? Well, we read Chicago Public Square, and we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more with a man that you know from the days when he was working at this here radio station. But Johnnie started her career with him, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, he is. Charlie Meyerson. How are you tonight, Charlie?
I'm fine, and I'm delighted to be with you. And I'm gonna steal a little bit of your thunder, Johnnie, because I want to recap all the ways that we have intersected over the years. Are you ready?
I think, yes.
I listened to Steve on WLS during my formative years. I'm still in my formative years.
Don't blame me for that.
My earlier formative years, I know.
Yes.
I started my first job out of college alongside Johnnie at WMRO-AM and WAUR-FM in Aurora in 1977. I attended your wedding, a wonderful event in 1984.
Yeah.
Where Steve did a killer version of Johnny Be Good. Am I correct?
Yes.
I did.
Which I'm just now thinking about. Johnny Be Good. What a great selection for a song that was when you're marrying someone named Johnny. And I found myself working the swing shift at the Chicago Tribune in 2008, and I was honored to join you guys nightly, it seems, for a regular segment from the update desk of the Chicago Tribune.
Yeah.
And then when I joined WGN News as news director, we won awards together as you led coverage of a big fire overnight.
Yeah, it was right down on Michigan Avenue.
Right.
And our producer was Margaret Larson at that point.
Wow. I'm still reeling at all these times that our paths have crossed, because you didn't even mention that I attended your wedding, which was one of the great stories of all time, because when we were working together out in Aurora and you came in and talked about being in a car accident and the fact that
that's right,
you had collided with this lovely young woman who you ultimately married. So there on the top of your wedding cake was the cars colliding.
two little matchbox cars
Yes.
that proved, I tried with a hammer to bang them up so they kind of resembled what happened in the accident. But let me tell you this, I speak from experience. Matchbox cars are almost indestructible.
Unless you step on them, and then you break your foot.
No, even then, even I tried to hammer them. So, they had,
gosh.
a couple of paint flecks came off, but it was close enough. That's right. So, yeah, you were there at the very beginning of my wonderful marriage to my wonderful wife, Pam.
And who was at fault in that car accident? I don't recall.
It's not important. There were no tickets issued.
That's right. You just got her number. That was the important thing, right?
If she were here, she'd interject. His insurance company paid.
Well, we should tell folks that they certainly recognize your name. You've been at a few radio stations here in Chicago. And, we're so fortunate because born and raised in this area, you've always worked here. You never left, right, Charlie?
I have to correct her. I was not born here. I was actually born in Detroit, but at 13 moved to Orland Park, unincorporated Palos Township. But almost.
But your entire journalism career has been at radio stations in Chicago, as well as the Chicago Tribune, and that's pretty impressive for 40 plus years, Charlie.
I don't know that I've ever asked you this, Charlie, but what gave you your passion? Because you have a passion for good journalism. What ignited that in you?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking. I have to credit my parents, who both were at various points in their career newspaper people. My dad was a newspaper editor in the Detroit area. The reason that we moved to Illinois when I was 13 in 1968 was that my dad, who had been teaching journalism at a suburban community college outside Detroit, got the same job at Moraine Valley Community College in Palos Hills. So he was a journalism teacher and taught me much of what I know and what I've taught and what I've tried to apply about concise writing, and good journalism. My mom was a journalist and would write both in Michigan and here in the suburbs of Chicago community news roundups for among others the Palos Regional newspaper back in the day. But also, you guys know I'm a comics fan, and Steve.
That's one of the many things we bonded on.
Absolutely, who are some of the most prominent journalists in comics? Clark Kent and Peter Parker.
Yeah, there you go.
And Peter Parker, Spider-Man, as a teenager, was working for this big newspaper in New York, and it gave me the idea in high school that maybe I could do some journalism in high school, and in addition to working for the student newspaper. So when a reporter for then the Star Tribune newspaper, Barb Hipsman, who went on to teach journalism in Ohio, was interviewing high school students what we thought about the war in Vietnam, I said, "Hey, do you need a stringer? Do you need any volunteer journalists?" And lo and behold, they started sending me to cover some school board meetings and park district meetings. And so in high school, I was like Peter Parker, kind of pretending that I was a journalist.
Were you a nerdy high schooler?
Johnny, I think you've known me long enough to know the answer to that. That's a loaded question. And yes, I think my wife and my kids and my sister and anyone else who's known me all these years will tell you, he's still pretty nerdy. The nerd is strong in this one.
I still have to say, though, it's very impressive that you never had to leave town to get the job of your dreams, because you've had some awesome positions. I mean, how many years were you with WXRT?
10 years.
10 years. Wow.
1979 to 1989. Well, yeah, and when I talk to young people who are considering journalism as a career, and sadly there there aren't as many of them as there used to be. I tell them that, assuming they have the luxury of a little bit of time, that they should look for a job first in the place where they want to live, and to follow their hearts. And for me, that was really staying close to family and friends. And so you probably both got this same advice when you were coming up. Well, you want to make it in Chicago, you're going to have to go to Podunk, Iowa, and pay your dues. And, I could have done that, but I also had friends, contemporaries at the time, who did that and never found their way back to Chicago. So, I decided early on I was going to look for something here, was lucky enough, really, to find that great job in Aurora, which was, for Johnny, for you and me both, as well as many others, including our good friend Dean Richards. We all started there in Aurora, and it was, far enough away from Chicago that, for instance, in my case, I could phone in news stories from Aurora for WIND radio in Chicago, back when WIND was a good radio station, as you'll recall.
Yes.
And get my voice on Chicago radio, which, helped build up the resume. And so, when I knocked down the door at XRT, I could say, I've done some work for WIND in Chicago. In high school, since we're going way back, I did do one phone-in report for, I believe it was then WDAI FM, the Earth Day report or something like that. Here at Carl Sandburg High School, kids are sending balloons into the air to mark Earth Day, whatever. And so I think that was my Chicago radio debut when I was back in high school.
You mentioned that sadly there are not that many that you come across that are going into the field of journalism. It breaks my heart that Columbia College has dropped their radio department. I'm like, what? Why? Couldn't you just hang on?
Well, one of the things is, I think, not being involved, I have to step back and say I taught radio news at Columbia College for 4 years in the 80s, and it made me a better journalist to be telling kids, don't do this, and here's why. So I owe a tremendous debt to Columbia College, and have had I think a good relationship with the college through the years, even when I'm not, getting paid for it. But I think it was a little antiquated that to have, at this point, separate tracks for radio journalism and television journalism and print journalism. Because, as the web taught us at the Tribune and elsewhere, it's all one. Radio stations have websites. Radio stations need people who can spell. TV stations need people who can write. Radio stations need people who can write and create video. So to have individual tracks, I think, was, at this point, short-sighted.
Understood.
The blatant plug light has started flashing. So
good.
we want to talk about, for people who have not checked out Chicago Public Square. Charlie, it's all yours. Chicago Public Square, who, what, when, where, how do you access it? What do you do?
All right. A shortcut, if people want to jump on that right now, and I'll be able to actually watch my email inbox to see if anyone actually responds to this. If you go to, right now, S-U-B, as in subscriptions, sub.Chicago Tribune. No, not Chicago Tribune. That's old habits dying hard. Sub.ChicagoPublicSquare.com. You can sign up, type your email address in, and every weekday at 10 o'clock, almost every weekday, I take some days off for the holidays, for instance, you'll get my take on news that is relevant to and important for the Chicago area.
And I don't know.
It began back in 2017 with the rise of the first Donald Trump administration. I had some time on my hands and a compulsion to get into the day-to-day news business again. And to my surprise, it's grown over the last almost 8 years now. People seem to value it. So I'll say that one more time, and then you guys can take it back. Sub.ChicagoPublicSquare.com. And it's free. It's always free. And happy to have everyone jump in and join the fun.
And I don't know if you heard our conversation with Ron Brown earlier, and Ron is manning the news desk tonight right now, and Ron was saying, and Ron, feel free to jump in, that Chicago Public Square is one of your go-to sources too, right?
Oh, I've been reading it every day for several years, 7 of the 8 years, maybe all 8 years, Charlie.
Ron, I don't know if everyone knows this. Ron and I, have been. I've been honored to be on the same team with Ron at Rivet, which is this startup that we began in 2013 to sort of reinvent radio news for the smartphone era. A great idea, wonderful talent, including, of course, Ron, which is how I came to know Ron. We're more in the podcast production business now, but Ron is a wonderfully talented news guy. And Ron, it's great to be on the air with you again.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But let's talk about the newsletter.
No,
it's just so good. I mean, there's nothing out there that equals it, that rivals it. That really, and seriously, everybody should have this.
Yeah, and we should explain too, because I did the shout outs for the people who are listening to us around the country. When we talk about this being a compilation of news that you can use to start your day, it's not just what's happening in Chicago, right, Charlie? This is your approach to, this is valuable stuff that you might miss, so I'm going to put it all together for you, so you've got it there at your fingertips.
Well, Johnny, I've really only had one idea through my whole career, which is newscasting. And what do radio newscasters do? What does Ron do every hour? What do all the WGN news anchors do? We traditionally have looked at the morning newspapers. I mean, but in the days before the internet, to see what's in there. We look at the wire services. As the internet has come along, we look at email alerts that we get from various news sources. We look at our Twitter, or maybe now, certainly for me, Blue Sky accounts to see what smart people that we follow are sharing. And then we boil it down to, a 3, 4, 5 minute newscast, maybe a 10-minute newscast. Here's what you should know. And it's generally with attribution. The Tribune is reporting this. The Sun-Times reporting this. The Associated Press is saying this. The New York Times says this. The Washington Post says this. And, I've billed Chicago Public Square as Chicago's new front page. And anyone who's looked at the front page of a traditional newspaper or the front page of a news website like the Chicago Tribune, which, for many years I would get in first thing in the morning and decide what stories were going to be on the front page of chicagotribune.com, knows that, yes, there are a lot of stories about things that happen in Chicago, but there are also, especially over the last 8 years, a lot of stories that happen elsewhere that affect what happens in Chicago. One of the, a few things have happened in the last few months. Trends have emerged in the feedback I get from readers of Chicago Public Square. One is, hey, why are you writing so much about Washington? And the presidential election, or more recently the incoming Donald Trump administration, and why aren't you writing more about Chicago? And my answer has been, yes, there's lots that's happening in Chicago, but frankly, what's happening in Washington is, in my opinion, going to have a lot more impact on Chicago and how Chicagoans and how people in Illinois live their lives than many of the stories that are geographically located here. So the idea behind a front page is, there's local news on the front page of a newspaper. There's also national news and world news. What affects Chicago and Chicago readers is, as I preached when I was news director at WGN, not just stuff that happens in Chicago, but stuff that happens anywhere, but that resonates with people who are listening or reading or watching here in Chicago. So Chicago Public Square, your approach is as an independent source for news, correct? Yeah. One of the nice things about what I've discovered in running Chicago Public Square is that it is, well, there are pros and cons. First of all, I miss editors. Having an editor, a second voice or a second pair of eyes, look at your work and say, hey, you got a typo here. Hey, you misspelled this. Hey, you got these facts wrong. That's not something to be dismissed lightly. Fortunately, I'm blessed with many engaged readers who are not shy about saying, hey, you got this wrong. And then I send out a correction. But as we watch what happens with national corporate-owned media where the people in charge are concerned, seemingly, about their businesses under an incoming Trump administration. We see instances where independent-minded journalists and independent journalism is not being given quite the free rein that we'd like it to get. Mm-hmm. And there's a story today in the news that we can talk about if you want.
Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot of things we got to get to. So we'll come back and talk more with Charlie Meyerson. And again, it's sub.chicagopublicsquare.com, or just go to chicagopublicsquare.com and you can scroll around and you'll find everything
and subscribe and follow that way.
It's Good News Week.
Steve King and Johnnie Putman at WGN Radio. Well, it may or may not be Good News Week, but we're talking about a terrific news site, chicagopublicsquare.com. That's chicagopublicsquare.com. We're talking with Charlie Meyerson. And Charlie, I want to address one thing that has impressed me from day one with Chicago Public Square. Separate from the fact that we've known you as a colleague for years and we respect your work, one of the many things I appreciate about the way you approach Chicago Public Square, unlike news sites, and I'll name it, like Fox News, and their slogan for years has been fair and balanced. They have never been fair and balanced from day one. If there is a story on Chicago Public Square, and if you have a particular take on that story, leaning one way or another, you say it. You don't hesitate to say, this is where I'm coming from about this particular story. And I really appreciate that.
Well, you know, one of the style choices that I've made at Chicago Public Square is when I write Fox News, when I type that, I go back and strike out the word news. There's a little crosshatch through the word news when I refer to it. You know, I'm going to go back to my college days when, you know, influenced by professors, I kind of rejected the notion of objectivity, which is, you know, has kind of become a corporate mandate over the years. I mean, and really is just something that manifested itself during what some have called the age of mass media, roughly 1955. The rise of television, to 1995, the rise of the internet. During those years, the mission of the news business, unlike before and after, was to amass the largest possible audience. And to do that, you tried not to piss anybody off. But who were some of the most influential journalists in that age of mass media? I mean, here in Chicago, Mike Royko. Was, again, a big influence for me. And Mike Royko didn't make any secrets about where he was coming from, who was a liar, who was a truth teller, whom you could trust, whom you couldn't. And so, you know, it's become sort of my mindset when I've been able to apply it over the years to not hide opinions that are based in fact. And that when someone has a reputation of being a liar or someone has a reputation of being inaccurate, that person is identified as such when that person is in the news.
And don't you agree that, sadly, too many people in positions of control of the news media don't understand that the average person, certainly there are people with all kinds of biases, but the average person can take a news report from someone who has a bias if they're open about that bias. Just don't say, I'm giving you everything fair and balanced. No, you're not. You're hiding your particular bent inside the story.
Yeah, I mean, the tradition, you know, just coming back to, for instance, Chicago City Hall, something that I covered, as others have, for many years. Over the course of covering the city council, for instance, you get to know, over time, which aldermen are full of crap and which aren't. And to report what one of those city council members says without putting it in context, without mentioning this city council member who has a reputation for being inaccurate, or who previously told us this and then we learned this. But instead of just quoting the alderman without that context is to provide a disservice, to do a disservice to the audience, and not provide context for, here's the quote. So, with Chicago Public Square, for instance, I look to elevate informed opinion from columnists who, may have opinions, but whose opinions are backed up by facts and hyperlinks and details. And people can certainly read those opinion columnists, and I generally identify them by something like columnist, so that someone knows going in, okay, this is not going to be your traditional straight, he said, she said, they said kind of story, that they have some context for understanding what they're about to read.
I think Neil Steinberg is a good example. You guys have a great working relationship.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, and he's
too.
Obviously a fan of yours too.
Yeah.
And that works out well because he brings our attention to something that you have reported on, and you do the same for his columns.
Yeah, and Eric Zorn also.
Yes.
A similar relationship. Again, two great columnists, and it's sad that the Chicago Tribune has parted ways with all really of its news opinion columnists. And it's great that Neil is still with the Sun-Times.
And sadly,
but yeah, I think that, I look to columnists to provide context and provide explanatory journalism that kind of the TikTok news reporting doesn't provide.
Yes.
And don't you think that what's happening with the Tribune, because I think objectively there are a skeleton crew of people at the Tribune who are really trying hard, in spite of the hedge fund owners that have decimated that paper.
Who used to, and we should remind everyone that once upon a time, the Tribune and WGN, world's greatest newspaper, were co-owned and are not anymore.
Yep.
There are tremendously talented journalists still at the Tribune. I still get the Tribune and the Sun-Times tossed onto our porch every morning.
Yep.
It is a much smaller staff than it used to be, and those who are there are doing the job with far fewer resources than was the case, when I left the paper to join WGN in 2009.
I did some end-of-year bookkeeping, and I was stunned at what we pay for a 7-day-a-week subscription. We're into the thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Okay, well, let me back up. If you're paying more than I believe it's $155 a year for a 7-day delivery, then you should call customer service.
What?
I'm not kidding you. And Eric Zorn has written about this at great length too. Much of and I don't want to pick on any one newspaper. Much of the business at this point, as I perceive it, because I'm not in it anymore, is relying on momentum from newspaper subscribers of a certain age and older, just to keep paying whatever because they've always paid it. But it is worth everyone's while, at least once a year, to call and say, I'm going to cancel unless you give me the best rate that you're offering your brand new consumers. And you can Google, say, new subscriber to this newspaper. So
I will start the year out that way because I'm not kidding you.
The Tribune's offering new subscribers, I think it's $155 for a full year. And if they say, no, we can't do it, then what you do is you cancel, and then you sign up with, your spouse's name and a different email address and get the new rate. But generally, they'll, the customer service people are happy to keep you on board. I'm paying $4 a month for access to the New York Times, and I think $4 a month for access to the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. Although, you want to talk about the Washington Post?
No. Who was the cartoonist that just resigned from the Washington Post?
Pulitzer-winning cartoonist Ann Telnis quit the Washington Post after an editor rejected her cartoon showing tech magnates, including Amazon founder and Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos, genuflect, and Mickey Mouse, by the way.
Mickey Mouse,
genuflecting before a statue of Donald Trump.
Yep.
My friend, another Pulitzer-winning cartoonist and columnist, Jack Oman, whom I'm proud to consider a contributor to Chicago Public Square. He's given us clearance to republish his cartoons, which I do frequently in Chicago Public Square, to which you can subscribe free at sub.chicagopublicsquare.com, as several listeners have already. Jack wrote something that I want to quote because he has a blog of his own. And he wrote this today about Ann Telnis's resignation. He's worked with her through the years. Mm-hmm. He says, here's the quote, "I grieve because it's not just Ann, it's everyone in journalism. If you're in opinion, you should be getting your affairs in order and making other arrangements. Unless you're a coward, then you'll be fine."
Mm. Wow.
And the bottom line there is, with these large corporate news media, for which I hope things go well and things get much better. Mm-hmm. We do see their owners bending the knee mm-hmm. to the new administration, the incoming administration. And so I put a great deal of hope in independent truth tellers, Substack, email, newsletter journalists mm-hmm. who have, in increasing numbers, been leaving these large news organizations to strike out on their own and form startup news organizations, or in some cases just work solo. And there is a lot of great work being done there. It's not the same as the work that was being done by big corporate media, but I put a lot of hope in what they're doing, Jack. Yeah. And now Ann Telnis has got her own email newsletter and will be distributing her cartoons that way, probably.
Yes, I just signed up for her Substack today.
Good, yeah. By the way, I was not actually familiar with her work, but I really like this cartoon that the Washington Post didn't publish, which now will, ironically, no doubt be seen by a lot more people than it would have been seen by if they'd published it in the Post.
Just before we take a break, did you just win another award from the Chicago Reader?
No, not yet. Chicago Public Square is, again, as it's been several years in a row, a finalist for Best Email Newsletter and Best Independent Website or Blog. Some years we win, some years we don't, but the voting just wrapped up on December 31st, and we'll learn the winners in March. But it's an honor just to be a finalist.
And in this case, he's telling the truth. We're going to take a break, and we will come right back for some closing thoughts with our friend Charlie Meyerson on WGN.
Steve King and Johnnie Putman at WGN Radio. A million ways to say another crazy day today. Headlines. We're talking with our friend Charlie Meyerson. You should check out ChicagoPublicSquare.com. That's ChicagoPublicSquare.com. Check it out. Subscribe. It's free, and your life will be better for doing that.
And Charlie, let's clarify. You can subscribe for free, but your site is actually reader supported, correct?
That's true. I did it free for a year. I think I mentioned that, I started it in 2017 mm-hmm. when, the first Trump administration was dawning. And after a year, as new forms of financial support evolved, back in the day I used Memberful. About a year in, I said, hey, is this worth anything to you? Subtext, mm-hmm. what will you pay me not to quit? And to my surprise, people actually paid me not to quit. And that model has since been adopted by an Substack most famously, but it mm-hmm. didn't exist back in 2018. Mm-hmm. And people are finding, in general, journalists are finding across the country and across virtually all beats, that people are willing to pay to get email newsletters that they find valuable. Which brings me back to something I said earlier. I said there have been a couple of threads of communication that have developed with readers over the last few months. Mm-hmm. One is, why are you doing so much Washington news, D.C. news, national news? The other is, please don't quit. I had a friend, a woman I hadn't seen for 20 years, stop me in the grocery store parking lot, or in one of the aisles at Jewel, actually, and said, love your newsletter, please don't stop, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Yep.
And I got to confide, had the presidential election gone another way, I was prepared to glide off into the sunset. But a number of people have unsolicitedly said, please don't stop. And so mm-hmm. now I'm kind of stuck. and it's a responsibility that I feel I have to keep doing.
And full disclosure, that was the part of the conversation we had with Charlie off the air a few weeks ago.
When we said, please don't stop.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm looking at texts that come in and wanted to clarify that, in fact, people can subscribe for free to Chicago Public Square, and you can give Charlie feedback. And Chicago Public Square is, in fact, visible on Facebook, if that's where you want to check it out first.
Sure.
And I'm going to...
Facebook and I believe Blue Sky and Threads...
Yeah, I have in the weeks leading up to the presidential election, Facebook, Meta, its parent company, Facebook and Threads, suppressed some of the posts that I shared, others reporting about specifically about Donald Trump. So I have begun to, let's say, deprecate the role of Facebook, which was the go-to channel for between editions updates for Chicago Public Square, in favor of Blue Sky.
Yeah.
So I'm now encouraging anyone who likes Chicago Public Square and wants to know what's happening between editions to follow Chicago Public Square on Blue Sky, which, can I get a little technical in this?
Sure.
It has a major advantage over Twitter, which once upon a time was of great value to me and many other people. Twitter turned off its API, its automated programming interface. I believe that's what it stands for. That allowed other programs to sort of skim Twitter. And that was a valuable channel for me to find out what all the smart people I was following on Twitter were sharing. It would rank news stories by, your 12 of your friends have shared this, 12 respected journalists have shared this. They turned that off. Blue Sky has that. There's a free app called SILL, SILL, that people who are on Blue Sky can use. And SILL basically cuts out the noise of social media and basically serves up, 12 of your friends are sharing this on Blue Sky, 11 are sharing this, 9 are sharing this, or they shared it within the last 3 hours. And that's a major source of information for me in Chicago Public Square and for the content that I share with people on Blue Sky, because I'm following people who are smarter than I am, and I'm able then to share the news that people who are smarter than I am with my readers, followers. For instance, that's how I learned about the Washington Post cartoonist Ann Telnis, who stepped down from her job. I saw it on SILL, which was monitoring Blue Sky for me. So I recommend that, Blue Sky and SILL.
I get it. You're looking out at the blue sky from your window sill. I get it. Okay.
I guess I think that's it.
Right.
Well,
it also helps that the guy who developed SILL actually took feedback from me. I made some suggestions. He said, "Yeah,
really?
Yeah." So it's nice when there's an organization with a human being behind it, as opposed to the faceless, unreachable customer service that you're getting at.
Yeah.
Like when you say to Facebook, why are you doing this to me? We have so many friends who are musicians who've had basically Facebook to shut them down, and this is how they make their living.
Yeah.
And
with no explanation, and no way to reach a human being. Yeah,
and it has increased over the past 6 months.
Yeah, very intense. Well, you've done a great job explaining what Chicago Public Square is all about and how people can get their copy of Chicago Public Square every day. But you've also done a great job, and I'm telling you folks at the Chicago Tribune, you better buckle up, because we're hearing from people saying, oh my God, I'm calling on Monday.
And so are we.
We've heard from people that are paying $116 a month. We're paying $190 every 2 months.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to pick on the Trib. This is true of all the major publishers and magazines. You call them, and cable providers, too. Anyone you have a subscription with, it's worth calling at least once a year to say, what's your best deal?
And our problem is we just kind of get complacent, and it's automatically withdrawn. And until you look at it, you don't realize, whoa, what am I doing here? So
and I don't play the age card often, but I will here. Johnnie and I are guilty of, as much as we embrace all forms of new social media, a day without a newspaper, or in Chicago, 2 newspapers on our kitchen table, is a bad day.
Absolutely.
And I don't apologize for that, but we need to find out ways to make that day a little less expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, congratulations with Chicago Public Square. I'm going to say right here, right now, join us in March so we can celebrate Chicago Public Square being chosen by the Chicago Reader, because it's going to happen again.
From your lips to the Reader editors.
That's right.
Are you kicking me off now? I'm just getting warmed up.
I know.
I was going to be with you all 6 hours tonight.
You hear that chortling in the background? That's Ron Brown.
Yes.
It was great to hear from you again, Charlie. And I hope that we hear from you again very soon.
Yes.
And I'll add my voice to the chorus, too. Please don't quit. I've been following you since XRT days, and I still do.
It's my privilege.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie. We'll talk again soon.
Happy New Year.
You too.
Thank you.
And again, it's chicagopublicsquare.com. Free subscription, but if you want to support Charlie, you can do that too.
Mm-hmm.